This past weekend, I went down to Richmond, Virginia to join a bunch of creatives for RavenCon 16. It's a science fiction and fantasy convention celebrating Edgar Allan Poe. Hosted this year and last at the Virginia Crossings Tapestry Collection. It's a campus style hotel with three buildings surrounding a courtyard. I had originally been accepted as a panelist in 2020 in Williamsburg and finally made it down to the con last year thanks to the pandemic. To my delight, they accepted me back again this year. So, welcome back to Morgan's Writing Tips and Writerly Musings with writing tips from the pros and, of course, my own writerly musings. I'm your host, Morgan Hazelwood, and today I'm here with my post con report for RavenCon 2023. So, before the con, after I got home from last RavenCon, I let them know I'd love to come back again. In November, I heard that I had been accepted as a panelist and was invited to fill out a survey about what I'd like to talk about. I got my reminder email in February to get my survey in. I got my welcome email in early March, and we got a tentative schedule in early April with panels listed, but many panelists had not been assigned anything, like me. I looked through the schedule and I let programming know which of the panels that had been scheduled I thought I would be a good fit for. And the next day, they added them to me, or me to them, that one. The week before the convention, scheduling conflicts had opened up slots on a few additional panels. So I volunteered for one more and was accepted based on my the time I bit a friend while watching a horror movie anecdote. So while masks and vaccinations were encouraged, they were not required. As I don't mind masking, I ordered a bunch of KN95s and like cute plaids to wear over the weekend. And I planned for a cool but pleasant weekend. And then it got hot. Luckily, I'd brought layers. So it worked out. Anyway, Friday. Last year, I'd shown up on Thursday night to avoid missing anything. But since registration didn't even open until 2 p.m. on Friday, I took a more leisurely approach this year. My first panel wasn't until 6 p.m., so I showed up at 3. I checked in, promptly misplaced my car keys, dropped my stuff in my hotel room, went back to my car, found my keys, and then went to registration. Last year, the left building was where the attendee registration was, the hotel restaurants, the vendor hall, the gaming rooms, and like half the panel rooms. The central building was where the rest of the panels were and the art show, and the right building was predominantly hotel rooms and parties. The panelist registrations had been in the Central Hotel building last year, so I headed straight there, where they had set up children's programming this year, and they sent me to the left building. There was no line, so I got my badge, said hello to my friends Sean and Luann, and did a quick tour of the vendors hall. So when I swung by to say hi to the ChessieCon table, I heard them worrying. They were worrying because the hotel had switched their room and they'd ended up in the wrong room with not enough beds, but the hotel had made it right by giving them a free second room. However, they were worried about the poor, unsuspecting attendee who was now going to be stuck between two party rooms. And then, as I was walking away, they mentioned the room number. Oh, that's me. They were relieved because they knew I knew what I was getting into. And It's gonna hit the room parties anyway. Note, at fan run science fiction and fantasy conventions, there is often a party board with open invite parties listed by their hosts, all located on the quote unquote party floor so people can find them. So off to the vendor hall, where I promptly bought an antlered dragon in a tumbler, and it was super cute. And I promptly broke off an antler. I went back to my room to drop off my find, finish unpacking, and get my notebook before my first panel. Then I got a chair massage. Gonna stretch. There was a small guest reception out back, so I got the hotel buffet and joined the small gathering. Set down my plate with Jennifer Povey and Hildy Silverman, and just as we were getting ready to sit down, we were warned off the seats due to quote red bugs. Spotted one on my cushion and just moved it out of the way before I took my seat. I am not a fan of chiggers. They are little red ticks that leave you itching for weeks. No, thank you. Between scarfing down my food, I did lightly chat with new friends before I had to dart off to my first panel of 7 for the weekend. I was the moderator for winning NaNoWriMo, with winning in quotes. So I got there early and tried to make sure I had a few notes of questions to ask and listed out the different NaNoWriMo projects I've completed so I could remember them. Cass Morris and Debbie Kupfer joined me in sharing our advice with the audience. We had about 4 people attending the panel, which compared to last year was double my best Friday panel from last year. And that was the lowest it got all weekend. So I felt I was off to a good start. I followed Cass down to the main restaurant to RavenCon's opening ceremonies. After awards and introductions and a geeky wrap, it was time for my second panel of the day on survivalism. Dun, dun, dun. The other panelists were Cemetery Cosplay, Dave Harlequin, and it was moderated by Hi Mark, who I'd met at dinner. You know, I had a lot to say about con survivalism after my whole con panel. Um, at the panel, one of the most amazing things, in my opinion, happened. One of our audience members, Kelly Griffiths, came up to let me know that she, A, was from Ohio, B, had heard about the convention in part because she follows my vlog, C, in her prep, had come across my video review from last year, D, this was her first ever convention. And E, she was going to be on panels, including one with me the next day. I hope you had a good time. It was so amazing. Anyway, if you're watching this. So I floated around for the next couple of hours, including loaning my air filter slash fan to my neighbor, Oh Hi Mark, who was hosting a playlist party and whose AC was, shall we say, lackluster. My final panel of the night was the one I'd volunteered for last minute. This panel is for the faint of heart, where we talked about horror books and movies and which ones we were willing to read and unsuggestions for muffling your screams of terror. Oh wait, maybe that last part was just me. The panel was moderated by Ashley R. Hall. The other panelists were J.M. Beal, Carol Cowles, and Storm Raven. So after that, I swung through the main parties. I rolled the dice and got dubbed an Epsilon, but ended up in Jesse Khan's food half of their party chowing down. I mean, snacks, where it was a little quieter and there was sitting space. At one point, Sean and Luann showed up with Alien Peril, a traveling party with jello shots. Might like parties, but conversations are my favorite part. Said the hall was far too loud to even try to sleep until the party shut down about like Saturday. I woke up, got ready, and made it to my first panel just on time, creating content for social media. This one was moderated by Joey Giddy Geeker Starnes, and I was joined on the panel by Angela Vaughn. There was plenty to share, but I've got a lot to say about this one as well. What with my whole social media starters guide series. After darting out for lunch and having my parking spot waiting when I got back, and another lap of the vendor's room, it was time for my next panel. So I was the moderator for this one, the leader reader with first time panelist Kelly Griffiths from the day before, Sandra Beldari, and Alex Matsuo. They had great suggestions for beta readers, but honestly, I did not do my best moderation job. As this is a topic I have talked extensively about and have given workshops on, I had a lot of information to share. So instead of balancing contributions or even just asking questions and letting them answer them, which I do when it's a larger panel, if it's like, you know, six or more, definitely. I did let everyone have a turn, but I should have set myself off a little more. They were all very gracious about it, but I know I could have done better. Sorry. Next, I stuck my head into con operations headquarters to ask a favor. Since the convention wrapped at 3 p.m. on Sunday, and very often hotels don't need the rooms right away, would there be any rooms available for me to live stream my weekly productivity sprints from? I was hoping to avoid streaming from the lobby or my car. Now, I have done live streams from my car before, but never without a co-host in the vehicle with me to do the screen and stuff. And they said they'd let me know. Then I got struck by a nap attack. Dun, dun, dun. I knew I wasn't going to be getting an early night with parties next door, so I rested up. When I woke, one of my Facebook friends, who I've never met in person, had messaged about tagging up. I replied just before she got to her car, and after a few rounds of tag, I got to meet Christine and her toddler. They were on their way out when I ran into a college friend of mine, Inigo, and got to catch up real quick. So that was really a great surprise. Next up, the first convention panel I actually attended rather than being a panelist for all weekend. For longtime watchers, you know that having my first panel at 6 p.m. on Saturday is a super slow weekend for me. I even thought about not attending any panel I wasn't on, but let's be serious. So, first up was creating a political and moral universe with Dr. J. Cal Wildari and Philip Cornell, which was not in the left building, but in the central building. So I was a couple of minutes late. Sorry. Following that in the same room, so I was not late, was There's a Reason You're Afraid of the Dark with Tina Glasnick, Jennifer Allen, Alex Matsuo, and Bishop O'Connell. I swung back after that by Low High Mark's room for Bill Mulligan's book launch party for Ram. And then I darted out for some highly recommended Pokeball. Well, at least Bill said it was good. It ended up with unagi eel, my favorite food, that I scarfed down as panels were switching over and made it into quantum mechanics, solar sails, or hyperdrives with Pellegrino and moderated by Angela Gettings. It was a roller coaster of a panel. So, my final panel of the night was a huge lineup at Ask a Mad Scientist with Charles Pellegrino, Dr. Anthony Alcoro, Brent Roeder, Dr. Ben Davis, Angela Giddings, Al R. Gold, Daniel Wallace, and Darcy Wold, plus some people in the audience, moderated by Jim Beal. A fun panel where I was asked to ask more questions from the audience. Too bad they needed us to clear out so they could clean the room before bed. Otherwise, I was about about to get to ask them all to give their best mad scientist laughs. So obviously, I swung through the parties again, favoring the snack party of Capclave. The tunnel party was cool but loud. Uh, then hanging out at Oh Hi Mark's playlist party until closing time. Sunday. Luckily, my first Sunday panel wasn't until 11 a.m., so I scrambled to get packed up and checked out in time and was within a minute of being on time for my first panel of the day. Within a minute. Um, for A Writer's Life Discover Your Process with moderator John M. Gaines. Find, Found myself really vibing with the other panelists, R.S. Rod, Belcher, and Mary Tarani's approaches. And Belcher later told me that he enjoyed my advice, stolen from better writers than I, that you don't have to include the whole conversation, just the relevant chunks. And I met Travis I. Savard in person. I'd stumbled across his writing live streams on Twitch like a few times, but I had no clue he was going to be there or was local or anything. So after that, darting down the hall for my last panel of the weekend, well, with me on behind the table, I made it to So You Want to Start a Podcast with Bill Mulligan, Angela Pritchett, and moderated by Maya Presler. I learned that Spotify is now offering free podcast hosting, so I might be looking into that. After my last panel, I checked the schedule and had a little time. So, after making sure I was fully checked out and confirming I could use a room for my live stream, yay! They let me pick the room. I picked the map room, which on second look wasn't actually the best choice. The fridge hummed loudly and the lighting was lacking. Next time, I think I'm gonna go for the library. So then I grabbed lunch at the hotel, but I'd already checked out. At most hotel restaurants, that's not a problem. But their system had been down all weekend. I needed to either charge my room or use cash. I realized my mistake right after I ordered, but reassured the bartender that I could grab cash at the ATM. Except I only had my credit card with me. What's a girl to do? Apparently, a girl's going to go to the vendor room, buy a copy of Go for Your Problems, Uncommon Advice from History's Least Likely Self Help Guru, and ask for cash back. Lunch sorted, I checked the schedule and realized I could squeeze in one more panel from the audience. So, off to Legends and Myths in Urban Fantasy with the author guest of honor, Esther Fresner, or as Rod Belcher again, Jennifer Povey, and Tina Glasnick, moderated by Bishop O'Connell. And then the con was over. Took several walks around the courtyard, I scouted the space, and finally set up for my live stream. The chat was a little light, but we had a bunch of people come and chat virtually. I snacked, of course, edited, and then packed up to head home. With just a little traffic around Fredericksburg, Virginia, I made it home by 8 p.m., where Catechus was very happy to see me. He's napping at my feet right now. So, another successful RavenCon in the bag. I hope to be back next year. Did you make it to RavenCon or another con last weekend? If you're interested about conventions, go ahead and let me know. If not, I hope you have a great week, and next week I'll have more writing tips and writerly musings. Bye bye.